Well, we are officially into the final week of the election campaign, and if Peter Dutton was hoping for a bump in the last Newspoll before voters hit the ballot box, he will be sorely disappointed. The latest Newspoll shows while almost half of voters believe Anthony Albanese should be thrown out of office, a greater number remain unconvinced Peter Dutton is the man to replace him. And the primary vote for Labor and the coalition also did not shift, respectively, staying on 34 and 35%, meaning a hung parliament is still a very real possibility. Kel, it looks like Albanese could well be dependent on those Teals or, dare I say it, the Greens.
Well, which is a frightening prospect.
Very.
It's 2010 all over again. Remember Gillard with her famous promise of there will be no carbon tax under the government I lead, and she couldn't keep it because Bob Brown and the Greens stopped her from keeping it. What it means is if we go into a minority government where Albanese is dependent on the Greens, every promise is out the window. It depends on what they will allow. So it is the worst possible outcome. I suspect what he would like to do would be to get the crossbench with Teals and a few others together so the Greens are out of it. But he's going to be over Adam Bandt's barrel in the same way Gillard was over Bob Brown's barrel. It's likely, if that's the way the voting goes, and I still have doubts about how accurate these, but they might be dead on, but I still have doubts as to whether they're really measuring everything that's going on in the community. But if they're right, and that's it, then pack up your bags.
Well, we will talk about some of the forgotten Australians that Peter Dutton says are not captured by that kind of polling in a minute. But Joe, I mean, I think Keller's right here. The Labor's already formed these preference deals with the Greens. So what's to say they wouldn't make deals with them despite Albanese's assurances?
Because they don't have to. What are the Greens going to do? Make Peter Dutton Prime Minister? And there's no way that Peter Dutton will even have the seats to be able to make that a possibility anyway. So Labor can do exactly what Anthony Albanese did with the Greens last time round, which was in 2013, not 2010, because he was on Kevin Rudd's side, not Julia Gillard's side. And the Greens came to him and said, all right, what are you going to give us for us to support you? And he said, absolutely, sweet FA, go and make Tony Abbott PM if you want to. And they walked out of there with the tail between their legs. They'll do the exact same thing. Labor made a terrible mistake in 2010. It has learned from it. And this Newspoll shows that it is possible there's a hung parliament. It's not saying that's the most...
No,
it's not saying that's the most... And so there's all these people who are just... It's a bit like the people who are saying, oh, there's no way Donald Trump's going to win the election, when they're staring down the barrel of all these numbers saying Donald Trump is going to win the election. They're arguing around this. This Newspoll confirms the one the time before. So if there's a margin of error, that margin of error has miraculously reproduced itself. 52-48 points to a majority Labor government. The most cynical, pessimistic sources in Labor that I've spoken to say they will get at least 72 seats. There is a possibility they may actually even pick up seats. So I do not think there will be a minority government. And even if they did, on 72 seats, they wouldn't even need to talk to the Greens. They could talk to people like Andrew Wilkie, a couple of stray Teals, and the Greens aren't going to they're not going to vote for Peter Dutton anyway. So Labor simply does not have to do any deals with them. Why would it?
But Jerry, let me
Well, they might make them just to make life difficult and to get what they want.
The relationship between Labor and the Greens has become totally toxic over Palestine. They've been barricading.
And yet, Evelyn, they did still accept their preferences and make preference deals. And Albanese put a Green second in his how to vote cards, his own seat, which he claimed not to even know who that Green was. Yeah. I mean, I can't believe anything they say.
I don't think you could believe anything any of our politicians say, except for perhaps some of the Freedom Party candidates. And I think this is one of the most unenthusiastic lead up to any election I've seen in my, last however many voting sort of lead ups. But it's really hard to know what to believe. To be honest, Kel's situation, what he said, I completely agree. Worst case scenario is if what the polls say is happening actually happens.
But they don't say it's happening.
I hope you're right, Joe.
But the Newspoll does suggest that it is still a real possibility.
It is a possibility,
yeah.
A bus falling from the sky onto our heads right now.
It's a possibility, but it could be likely. It could be likely.
Yeah, I don't know.
So on the thing with Labor and the Greens, I know I harp on, and I hate the Greens. I would much rather Labor didn't do any deals with them whatsoever. But they are doing less preference deals with the Greens at this election than they have at any time before.
A few, and the overwhelming majority of seats is including Albanese's own seat,
But
including Mark
he will win that on
seat.
primaries, so that is completely pyrrhic
Look,
for the
I'll
Greens.
throw a
the
spanner in
first
the
place?
works, right?
Yes.
I believe that Labor and Greens a long time ago decided that let's pretend to be enemies. So the Greens, because people are going to not like the two major parties, so because they still work closely together a long time ago and people forget. So the Greens have built up the young demographic. So Labor's like, you be our enemy, you get all the young people, and then we'll work together once we get in, right? And the issue here is whether it's a hung parliament, whether you think Labor's is going to walk in, it's the Senate we need to be concerned about, because that's where the deals are made to get legislation through. So I'm curious to see how that's going to pan out, because there are a lot of smaller parties, smaller, like Gerard Rennick, people like that running for the Senate, and that's where the issue is. And the Greens often try and get in the Senate so they can push things through for Labor.
Well, it will be an interesting election to watch. There is no doubt about that, even if the campaign itself has been quite underwhelming. Look, according to the latest SEC Newgate Mood of the Nation survey, it's looking even worse for the coalition, because Mr Albanese has streaked ahead of Peter Dutton on cost of living. The ALP now leads the coalition 42 to 24% on who voters think can better manage the economic crisis. Just have a look at this graph. It shows voters' confidence in the government to handle cost of living plummeting from about September 2022, while their faith in the coalition was steadily climbing. But things shifted suddenly in February this year. Labor's rating skyrockets and the opposition's declines sharply. Kel, why do you think there was this sudden change? I'm trying to think what happened then. The RBA rates dropped in February. Was it all to do with that, or is it just that the closer to an election, especially with a first-term government, people get a bit spooked of change?
Look, can I be honest, I really find it very hard to understand, because you would think that in the end, in fact, a good friend of mine, Hugh Mackay, one of the great researchers in Australia, used to say a whole lot of political speeches and a whole lot of political advertising has no impact. It's real life that has an impact. Real life for 3 years has been these guys make everything more expensive and more difficult for us. And there are now more Australians doing two jobs than ever before. There are more businesses, particularly small businesses, going bankrupt than ever before. That's real life. So I've got to admit to being beaten as to why real life is not defeating the rhetoric in this case.
I know.
Why is it
because
easy?
Labor are probably the best at political campaigning. They just lie. They just tell you exactly what you want to hear. And in a time of hopelessness and fear, when you're really desperate, you will latch on to anyone that's going to tell you that things will get better and get better with us. And the coalition have failed with that. The coalition kind of handpick key things and they jump around, and they haven't been strong on their message to say we are the solution to fix this. But Labor just pushes through. They don't apologise for anything. They haven't talked about the past and the mistakes they've made. They just said we're the ones to help you.
You know what happened in February? Dutton opened his mouth. I'm serious. He ruined his own campaign, or whoever's advising him, because all he had to do was shut up and stop parroting exactly what Labor is saying and come up with his own policies that is an alternative and not just Labor light, and perhaps he would have won. Because to be honest, I am that fed up with the Liberal Party, because all they do is squander things. They had a real opportunity here to give Australians what they want, exactly like what you said, Amanda, but they failed. The only thing that I think the Liberal Party have got right is perhaps the referendum. But then now, post-referendum, when they have the Australian people behind them and the momentum of that on all of these important issues that are around that exact same cultural issue, they continue to fail again and again. And that is why the enthusiasm is behind all of the minor parties. There's really not much enthusiasm behind Labor. There's really not much enthusiasm at all behind Liberal, but all the enthusiasm, exactly like you said, Gerard Rennick, Craig Kelly, all of these freedom parties, because people are just desperate for something different than the same crap that we've been having for the last 3 years, and that's all Liberal
And the
offering.
polling does show that the support for major parties is at a record low.